Bo Burnham, I just recently saw a video of him from like 10 years ago. What a genius. Like he had this insight 10 years ago because he was a content creator. So he saw it. He like kind of like had a premonition of the future about this. And what he said was so brilliant. He said that they used to, a long time ago, people used to colonize land. People used to try to take property. People used to try to take things from each other. Now people want to colonize your attention. People want to colonize your mind. So your mind and your attention are the goods. Like your mind and attention are the valuables. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 115 on the Pranzata Podcast on YouTube. Before we get into it, if you are new to this podcast and you enjoy what you hear today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would be incredibly helpful. Today is going to be a solo podcast where I take questions and answers. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it. The first question is from Joe. Joe asks, what is more important to me right now, the process or results? I feel like right now, this is a great question, and it's actually really applicable to how I'm feeling in my life right now. I feel like the past couple years, I was very much in a grind mentality, like heavy grinding, which I don't regret at all. I think it was something really good for my productivity. However, right now, I'm really kind of taking a step back from that. Not to say that I'm not being productive. I'm continuing to be disciplined and consistent with my schedule, but I'm sort of giving myself a little more wiggle room and a little more freedom to really enjoy my downtime in between and to loosen up my deadlines a little bit. So if I can give a more concrete example, before I was kind of, I was really focused on growing my channel quickly. So I was like trying to crank out videos, like YouTube videos, every single day because I was focused on the numbers and I was focused on the algorithm and I was focused on, just hitting the numbers quicker and reaching 1,000 subscribers quicker, monetizing my channel. I was kind of very much in the marketing end of things, mentality of things. But lately I've just been really sort of wanting to take a step back and do things at a slower pace because I actually think I believe right now that if I'm happier in what I'm doing and I'm enjoying myself in the process and I'm less attached to outcomes, I'll probably, not only will I enjoy what I'm doing more, but I'll probably be able to reach some sort of flow state where I actually reach success in a timely way. And it's kind of like the old saying, like a watched pot never boils. I want to stop watching the pot with my success, and I kind of just want to come into a more natural flow. So, right now, instead of doing videos every day, I'm still on a consistent schedule, but it's one that really works with my lifestyle right now. So rather than posting every day, I try to post videos 4 days a week. Or if I have something going on in my life, like something really, intense going on in my life, like a move or a breakup, I kind of give myself a little wiggle room to take a week off from making videos if I have to. Before I was really strictly but the algorithm is going to I'm going to lose my place in the algorithm and it's not going to send my videos out. And there might actually be some degree of truth to that. There might be some truth that if I take a break, I'm going to have less results, but I'm really trying to think about the big picture. And I think in order for me to produce my best work, it's important that I'm happy with what I'm doing and that I'm healthy and sane, and I'm taking care of myself because, I'm a podcaster, I'm a musician, and I feel like a lot of these things are touching upon the human spirit. Like a lot of what I like to do conversationally on my podcast is to try to touch into big ideas and I like to have deep conversations with my guests. So I think that's really touching on the human spirit and music as well. That's another thing that I think music is essentially I think it's important to have a clear mind and a healthy body to produce good music. So I don't want to ignore those parts of myself. So to answer your question, that was just a long and winded way of basically saying I'm very much in the process right now and not the results. And I'm just enjoying what I'm doing now. I'm really happy with the flow and the rhythm that I have going on. One more comment I want to make about that too. I also started noticing that being too much in the, how could you say it? Being too much in the results and not the process of this, I found myself slowly over time morphing into a product of the trends. Not terribly, but I just kind of found myself leaning towards making more clickbaity type material. I was talking about this on my last podcast episode that, sometimes I would feel inclined to like put more sexy or seductive thumbnails of myself up just to kind of like lure people in, which I actually still don't think is a terrible idea. But I really just started thinking about the bigger picture, and I'm like, that's not really the vibe or the energy that I want to put out in the world. That's not really the impression I want to make amongst young women, that if you if you show your tits more often, you'll get likes. That's not the vibe I want to put out there. So I mean, I probably have cleavage today, but that's just like my nature. That's just actually like how I like to dress. I do like to dress sexy, but what I'm saying is I don't want to like make a showcase of it in every thumbnail as a way to try to get views. I don't want to do that anymore. I really I've been trying to put out like much more wholesome thumbnails. You can even like browse through my history and you can see like the progression of how I'm figuring things out on my channel. And I had much more clickbaity, like what's going to get their attention type thumbnails. And now I'm kind of leaning more into this, like, I want this to be a wholesome channel. So I'm going to show my thumbnails as wholesome. That might grow my channel slower, but I would rather grow it slowly and actually attract people that are there for me and that are going to stay for the long run, not people who click on some clickbaity thing that I put up and just move on to the next clickbaity thing on a different channel. So very much kind of like reframing the way I do things, and I'm leaning very heavily into the process and not the results. That's not to say I don't have goals, but there was an imbalance before, is what I'm saying. Okay, next question is from Geertude. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If you do listen to this, you can try to maybe phonetically spell it in the comment section so I can understand if I'm saying it correctly. But I think your name is Geertude. And Geertude asks, what do you think about open relationships? I think this is a very complicated topic, and it's going to be difficult for me to answer this as thoroughly as I possibly could in this episode because I have a list of questions to go over. So I'm going to make it more of a brief answer so you can get a general idea of where I'm coming from. But keep in mind that I believe this is a very complex issue. So I don't think you could do a whole podcast episode on this topic alone, is what I'm trying to say. First, before I give my answer, I want to preface this by saying I think relationships and monogamy and lust and all that is really messy and really complicated. So what I see monogamy and polyamory are as two attempts to solve two possible solutions to deal with the mess of love and the mess of romance and the mess of human instincts and lust and relationships and whatnot. I don't believe that there is a utopian solution. I don't think either solution is perfect. I think there's ups and downs. There's pros and cons to either solution. Personally, I would have to vouch for monogamy as a solution that works for me. Again, this could be a whole episode in itself, so I'm going to just stick to some basic points of why it's a preference for me. One of the talking points or the selling points of polyamory is that, and it's actually, it's valid and it makes sense, is that in relationships, romantic relationships that are monogamous, we tend to expect to get all of our needs met from this one person. We expect them to be a good friend. We expect them to be emotionally available to us at all times. We expect them to be sexually available to us, or else we feel lonely or rejected. So the theory is that it's not possible to expect all of this to be met from one person. It's not fair. It's not possible. And, even in a monogamous relationship, you can outsource these needs from friends, from family. But even specifically in polyamorous relationships, they even narrow that down to sexual and romantic and emotional support. Even if we take the topic of sexual alone, let's say one partner has a very high sex drive and one doesn't, or for whatever reason that other partner is not in the mood to open up intimately in some kind of way. So I guess a polyamorous solution would be, well, the reason why relationships fail is because this is an impossible situation. You cannot expect this one human being to meet all your needs and to meet all your needs for the rest of your life, because you might meet somebody who maybe in one phase of their life, like when you first meet them, they're very energetic and they're able to be there for you sexually, romantically, emotionally, but things happen in life. So no wonder there's so many divorces. So the argument makes sense. Like, I understand where polyamory, people who practice polyamory are coming from in, well, outsource it to different people. You don't need to have one romantic partner to fill that gap. But to me, where I find this line of thinking to not be better for me, to not be a better solution for me, the way I see it is that I don't think the solution is outsource my needs to other people. I think the solution is learn how to be alone because I think you're just creating, especially for me, who I tend to be a little more anxiously attached. So for me to feel like insecure or abandoned by my partner who's not meeting my needs, if I divide that attention up into multiple people and expect other people to meet those needs, to me that's like, well, I'm not really learning how to solve that problem of being anxious, being anxiously attached. So I think the real solution for me would be to, rather than saying, well, he can't meet my needs, then he will, learn how to meet my own needs. Like, I think to me that would be a more sensible and healthy solution. Otherwise, if I were just to continue to outsource those needs with other people, I think for me, I would just never learn how to be alone. Like, I would just sort of always expect somebody to meet my needs. So I do find a flaw in the theory of polyamory in that sense. And there's a lot of talking points I could bring up. So I'll just bring up one more because I want to move on to the next question. But another thing is, I feel like these days our attention is so divided into multiple different sources. That's kind of like a natural progression due to technology. Like, I was reading something the other day that said a lot of young people, they can't focus on one thing. It's just not the way our brains are wired anymore. They need to be able to focus on multiple different things and to multitask. So for example, one student might need to be listening to music while doing their homework, while checking their phone, while having something in the TV on in the background, and they kind of need to like shift their focus into multiple things. I feel like the progression of the times, usually you can see this. Where I got this from was actually from music school. I remember in music school, I had a music professor tell me that music and art in that time period always reflect each other. So for example, if I think back to I think I talked about this on a history podcast, but if I think back to the Bach era, the Baroque era, the music that Sebastian Bach made was very ornamented and quick and like frilly. And then you can also see that being represented in the architecture of the time. Like everything was very golden and ornamented and very heavily designed. So I feel like in a way, it's not just music. That doesn't just reflect music and art. I think that reflects many different things in the culture. So I think how we can see this being manifested in our current culture is that while our attention is being divided and we need to split these things up into all these different things, it would only make sense that that would naturally progress into relationships as well. So I can't just do this. I need to have multiple different partners. Makes sense. It seems like just a natural progression of the way things are going. But again, going back, for me personally, I would still pose the argument that I think monogamy is better. For me, no judgment, but and the reason I say this is because I don't know if we're happy with our attention divided like that. There's so many ways this could go, so I'm trying to give a parallel example. Okay, for example, even within the media I consume, I find it really difficult to sit down and like watch something now. So sometimes I'll just like people will scroll through like 60-second reels and TikToks and whatnot. And even within that, they don't even like watch the whole thing. Like sometimes they don't even watch the full 60-second like reel, Instagram reel or TikTok. They'll just scroll to the next one, etc. But I'm not sure if people are happy doing that, because I find there to be something incredibly rewarding about sitting down and watching a full length film and like really sitting with it and getting to absorb the music and the whole production and the story and the storyline and the excitement. So where I'm going with this is, while I think we are naturally inclined to move quickly, I do think that anytime I hear about anybody in our culture who does take a step back and take things slowly over a longer progression, like a film, for example, versus a TikTok reel, I usually find that those people report like how satisfied and content that they felt afterwards. So the reason I'm bringing this up as a parallel is because I think most human endeavors are probably the same. It's probably much more rewarding and satisfying for a human being to see out the long term of something. And I just feel like if you're dividing your romantic attention amongst multiple people, you're not really seeing out and working through the struggles that do exist within a monogamous relationship. And again, going back to what I said earlier, it's not that monogamy is easy. It's not that monogamy is utopian. Absolutely not. But I just think if it's with the right person, like, I'm not condoning to stay and work through struggles with somebody that you're not happy with. I don't believe that. But I believe if you have two willing candidates that are sexually attracted to each other and that have aligned beliefs and who both have a vision of a future that they want together, and those visions are more or less aligned, and both parties are willing to work hard, I just think that the outcome of that is so beautiful and difficult, but so beautiful. And I just don't think, if you're dividing your romantic attention amongst multiple people, I don't really think you're ever going to see out that, like, again, to that parallel, you're not going to see out the full film. You're just TikTok reeling relationships, you know? That's my opinion. I'm sure there's counter arguments to that. I'm sure some people might argue that, well, you are seeing out these relationships. You're just seeing them with multiple people and not just one of them. I imagine that's probably a possibility, but I would also imagine that that wouldn't be possible. Like, at a certain point, there would only be so much energy that one human being would have to give. And by dividing that energy up amongst multiple people, I would imagine that you wouldn't be allowing one thing to completely flourish. I mean, I've had issues with that in my own creative life, for example. Like, this year I had decided to take a step back from stand-up. Like, a lot of people are like, why haven't you been doing stand-up anymore? It's not that I don't love stand-up. I love stand-up. It's just that as a one human being, I can't possibly give all my love and devotion. Let me rephrase that. I can't possibly split my love and devotion and expect one to completely flourish. I would have to pull back some energy from somewhere in order for one to be completely seen out and flourishing in the most maximum capacity of possibilities. And I believe relationships to be no different. I think it sounds incredibly exhausting to me to have to divide that dedication and work up to multiple people. So yeah, that's where I would have to stand with that. But again, that could be something that we could talk a lot more about that. So I'm going to stop there and move on to the next question. Okay, the next question is from Ryan Brennan Guitar. Ryan Brennan wants me to talk about navigating relocation. By navigating relocation, because I actually reached out to him and asked him to be more specific on his question. And what he meant by navigating relocation is to talk about how to deal with living in a new area and the difficulties that come along with being a brand new person living in a new neighborhood. So I'm actually very familiar with this because I've moved a lot in my life, and I actually just moved to Philadelphia about 4 months ago. So I can definitely give you some really good pointers on how to deal with being the new person in a brand new situation, in a brand new town. So if you're talking in terms of how to make community and make friends, I find that there's actually a lot of ways, especially now with the age of the internet, there's a lot of ways to get into this. I think for me, what was really helpful to me was to get involved in some type of social group in the area. And now, because of the age of the internet, that's easier to do than ever. You just go on Facebook and type in the name of your town. So for me, I would type in whatever you're interested in. So for me, as like, I'll give you an example for me. When I first came here and was interested in comedy, I was looking up comedy open mics near me, or as a musician. And I think you're a musician as well, so this applies to you. You can type in on Facebook, open mics near me, like music open mics near me. That would be an amazing way to start networking and meeting people in your neighborhood. Just like look around and see, is there anything like that, especially something that would apply to you and your line of work, like musicianship. And it doesn't have to be just music. I'm sure there's other things that you might enjoy. Like if you like to read, you could see if there's like a local book club or something like that. Or I don't know, you don't even have to join clubs. You can even, for example, you know how I've made a lot of friends just by going out and being nice to people in the neighborhood. Like, get to know your neighbors, like be polite to your neighbors, knock on their door, tell them you're the new guy in town. There's a lot you can do to kind of get your face out there. I would say be polite to the people in the town, like kind of like go to different restaurants, like really explore. Like this is actually something I really loved doing when I came to Philadelphia. I really liked just kind of like checking out the different sections and trying out new restaurants, trying out new hair salons, trying out a new doctor's office. Like, I mean, there's so many different ways you can figure out your town. Just like have fun exploring, but most of all, be polite and be friendly everywhere you go. Because I think that's really going to go a long way, is to have your face be recognized in this town as a pleasant face to interact with. Leave good tips. You know what I mean? I mean, again, it sounds like a negative thing, like you're bribing people to like you, or you're bribing your way into the community. But I don't see it this way. I really enjoy like making people in the community happy. So I think this is just an easy way to like kind of get yourself in. Just, I don't know. This kind of applies not even just to people who are moving, but just everybody in general. I'm kind of finding as I get older, rather than sitting around and waiting, like, I'm lonely, I have no friends, like, because I've been guilty of kind of like playing the victim in that. Not that I'm saying that's what you're doing. Like, I'm just kind of like relating this back to my personal life experience. But I've kind of like in my life, when I was really younger, I was very shy and very socially awkward. And I would kind of like be in this victim mentality about it and be like, oh my God, nobody calls me. But nowadays, rather than like waiting around for people to call me, I just pick up the phone and call other people. And I find that's like the easiest way to make connection, is just to do the work myself. And you'll be surprised. Like at first it might feel discouraging, like what the why do I have to call people? Why don't they call me? But over time, you'll find that people will kind of like be inspired by that, and they'll start picking up the phone and calling you sooner. So I don't know, long story short, check out Facebook groups, explore your town, be polite to people where you go so people remember you, introduce your name, tell people and actually tell people you're new in the neighborhood. I've been doing that as well. Like, oh, I'm new in the neighborhood. I'm a musician in the area. And it's just like an easy way to make friends. Okay. Next question. The next question is from Nando, and he wants to know my thoughts on the Mandela effect. When you had sent me this question, I initially responded, oh, I got this question and I'm going to revisit it again. I actually confused this with something else. I did not get this question. This is my first time receiving this question. So I'll be honest, at first I had never heard of the Mandela effect. So I did some research prior to this podcast in order to give my best answer. So if you're new to this, if anybody listening to the podcast is new to this as well, you're learning this with me. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, but based on the research I did, the Mandela effect is the idea that a group of people, or a phenomena that a group of people believe an event existed, a large group of people, typically like even the whole country, believe that an event occurred that never did actually occur. And collectively, everybody has this memory of something that occurred, even though it did not. And there is another important part of this Mandela effect is to point out the fact that there really is no clear explanation of why this phenomena occurs. It's called the Mandela effect because they're relating it back to Nelson Mandela and the commonly held belief that he died in prison, which he did not. So that's where it got the nickname Mandela effect. Furthermore, I hate to use the word conspiracy because I feel like there's naturally negative connotations around the word conspiracy, but from the research I did online, it was classified as a conspiracy theory, being that there's no true evidence of it. So it's just theory. The theory is that there's multiple theories about it, but some to explain a little bit would be that what's actually occurring is that this isn't a mistake. This isn't an accident that all these people memorized the same thing by accident and got this incorrectly. What could be possible is this could be some type of natural occurrence of quantum physics and quantum reality relating to the multiverse, which I am familiar with that theory, that an infinite amount of universes exist. Therefore, it's almost like a glitch in the matrix that like these memories are not accidental. They're actually information that's being pulled from somewhere in these multiverses. Anybody who knows about this, you can give a little more information about the definition below because I'm new to this. But from my understanding, that's what I was able to grasp from it. That's the best definition I was able to grasp from it. So to give you my opinion on this, so like I said before, I am new to this, so I can't honestly say I personally have any experience with it. I was listening to reading some of the examples that they had online, and there was one that I did relate to that I was like, oh yeah, that is weird. And it came from the movie Snow White. So in the movie Snow White, there's the classic line, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Well, it turns out in that Snow White, the actual line was magic mirror on the wall and not mirror, mirror on the wall. And when I read that blew my mind. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was mirror, mirror. So if I could relate to any of the examples, the mirror, mirror on the wall example did relate to me because my memory was that it was mirror, mirror on the wall. As far as my opinion on this theory and the conspiracy end of it being okay, there's some explanations for this. For one, it could just be that one person started quoting and reciting it as mirror, mirror, and it just caught on. That's a possibility. But according to this theory, the conspiracy part of this theory is that no, it's not an accident. It's actually a manifestation of the multiverse and of quantum physics. I want to say that I do keep an open mind regarding these things. I am very curious about quantum physics. I'm really curious about I'm very curious about the spiritual world. I'm very curious about a lot of those different ideas. So I do keep an open mind around this topic. However, I would personally at this moment lean towards this probably just being a mistake and not evidence of quantum reality, which I do believe in quantum reality and other things. But to me, what I'm reading so far, and again, I haven't looked into this enough, but to me, it wouldn't make sense if that people are misremembering this memory. Why would there only be one misremembrance? So, for example, with the Nelson Mandela, for example, if there's an infinite amount of universes that exist, why would people only be remembering one reality or even two? Because there's the reality of Nelson Mandela's real death in our society, and then there's the reality of the false memory that he died in prison. But if this was a product of a multiverse, why would there only be those two false memories? Why wouldn't there be like, oh, but he died in a car accident. Oh no, he died from a drug overdose. Oh, he never existed at all. Like, why wouldn't there be more false memories if this was coming from a multiverse. It seems odd to me that there would, if there's information being pulled from a multiverse, that there would only be two and not more of the multiverses. So for that alone, I'm going to say that I don't think this is a product of quantum physics or quantum reality, but I do believe in some instances and things in which there are manifestations of quantum reality or a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. I do believe in those types of things. I believe, for example, deja vu. I think deja vu is some sort of like glitch in the matrix, but based on this information, I'm not so convinced much about the Mandela effect. I think that's just an error amongst human beings that probably one person just misquoted it and it caught on. That would be my guess. But again, I do keep an open mind with this stuff. So correct me in the comment section if you, well, not even correct me, challenge me in the comment section if you find some flaw in my explanation, and if you have an argument as to why there's more evidence that this is a manifestation of the quantum reality. Okay, so I have a couple more questions. My next question is from Gordon. Gordon wants me to talk about how did I originally get into fitness and how do I like it? I guess how do I like my fitness today compared to how I got into it? So originally when I got into fitness, I was 22, I want to say. It came from a place of just wanting to I mean, if I'm being real, I was kind of an unpopular, quiet and awkward teenager, and I think when I entered into my 20s, my young 20s in particularly, I had this like strong urge to just completely turn it around and to become a better version of myself, I guess you could say. And fitness has been a long journey for me. Like I've screwed up, I've had some injuries, I've had an eating disorder. So I feel like right now I'm in a very good place with my fitness. But yeah, no, it started out as a healthy desire just to get better. And then what happened was, in the very beginning, I became very addicted to the results of my training. I'm not sure if I'm getting off topic, but how I'm answering this question, because you might be asking like, how did I start weightlifting? So I guess I'm going to get into that in a little bit. So I'm going to try to keep this short so I could get to that as well. But anyways, my initial weight training started off as a desire to get better, like I said. And then it kind of slowly became an obsession, and I became addicted to the power, like the rush of seeing the improvements and the rush of watching the weight on the scale drop. And then I think it kind of like the obsession turned into a negative thing at a certain point. I want to say I started when I was 22, and I want to say between the ages of 24 to 26, 27, probably around there, is when that was a very rough time in my life, because it was like the eating disorder obsession phase of my training and my weightlifting, which was then followed by a crash of serious injuries because I was lifting heavy weights and I don't think I had enough nutrients to recover. I didn't think I was giving myself rest days. So I had to take several years off of fitness. And then I slowly got back into fitness after years of resting. So I want to say I stopped working out when I was 27. And then I started working out again when I was 29. And my getting back into it was very slow for me. I started with Pilates, and I started with stretching and yoga and long walks. And that was really all I could handle for about a year or two as I was recovering the injuries that I had. I mean, I was in a lot of pain for a long time with different back injuries and wrist injuries and whatnot. And then, yeah, I started taking a really slow progression towards recovering my mental health, recovering my eating disorder, because that was like a long recovery. I didn't just like recover overnight with that body dysmorphic like mindset of thinking I was fat when I was actually really skinny. It took years to really work through that. So I eventually got my way back into weightlifting, which I never thought was possible. I thought I completely screwed up my body and that I could never weightlift again. But now I'm actually lifting. I'm lifting weights. I want to say 2 days a week. I do a very heavy lift. And then I want to say about 2 or 3 days in between, I work out from home where I do weights, but it's from home. So I don't have very heavy weights. Like I have like max 40-pound weight here at home. So I do a combination of that, and I'm just like, I'm really happy with where I'm at now physically with like my mental, like everything, the whole picture, my mental health, my perception of like how I actually look in the mirror versus like what I thought I looked like years ago. I'm in a very good and healthy place with all that. And I'm like really proud to be in a place where I'm lifting weights and seeing the progression at a slow and steady pace, as opposed to like crazy dieting and like not giving myself rest time. I'm like really taking good care of myself now. To answer the more specifics, in case this is what you mean about how I got specifically into weight training, when I first started working out when I was 22, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was like making the mistakes as a beginner in fitness. I was just like running a lot, like with no knowledge of like how much to run or I mean, running's just running, right? But there's more that goes into it than that. There's like interval running and like, there's like certain ways that you have to run to avoid losing muscle, like stuff like that. So how I got into weightlifting is I ended up dating a guy who was really like, he was ripped. Like he was like really into weightlifting. And like funny, this is besides the point, but I remember when I dated him, a lot of my friends at the time were like, you're not even friends, like guy friends who were like mad that I weren't dating them. They were like, you're shallow. And I'm like, no, like I'm not even into like bulky fit guys. Even though I'm into fitness, I actually prefer, if you look at my track record over the years of the guys I've dated, I'm actually into more like if there was an athletic build I liked, it would be more like the soccer player type, like fit but thin, So no, it wasn't from a place of shallowness. I liked his body obviously, but that's not what gravitated me to him. He was so smart. I really liked him because he was like hyper intelligent, and that's why I dated him. But he happened to be this weightlifter, and like huge, like muscly weightlifter. And so when he saw that I was trying to get fit, he was very kind. He wasn't rude to me about it, but he was complimentary. Hey, I see the work you're doing. However, I know how to get your results faster. So I essentially had like a free personal trainer by dating this weightlifter. And he really I don't know if he listens to this podcast, but if he does, shout out to all the things you taught me. Like there's still things that, because I dated him when I was 22 years old, but there's still things that he taught me like about health, about nutrition, about my diet that like, it was like parenting. Like it was like the knowledge I should have gotten like growing up from like having, this isn't to talk shit about my mother. She was, she had her issues of her own, but he really like nurtured me and he taught me how to take care of myself. Again, I took it to a way too far direction and became obsessed with the working out, and I was under eating, but he really did teach me like the same principles that I still use today with like how I eat, which I don't want to get too into because we're going to get off topic, but I'm very into like not cutting out food groups, but eating clean versions of everything. So for example, I'll still eat ice cream. I just won't get the Breyers one with all the shit in it. I'll get the one with just like the milk and the cream and the sugar and the eggs, period. Bread, like I'm not getting the Wonder Bread. I'm getting the bread with just like flour, sugar. And he really was the one who like ingrained a lot of those principles in me. And shout out, I like, not to be braggy, but I get people all the time that are like, how are you 35? Like you look so young. And I'm like, I think it's because of those principles. Like I think it's because of the stuff he taught me about like food. I think he really taught me how to take care of myself and how to make sure I'm eating good quality foods, So yeah, long story short, that's how I specifically got into weight training, because of that boyfriend I dated. And that was like more or less like a story of my fitness journey. So lesson learned a lot of lessons along the way, but I didn't answer your question about like how I like it. fitness is a huge component in my life. It gives me energy for everything I do. I think it's so important. Like, I sit around a lot from teaching piano, and like I like to read and I do my video editing. So there's a lot of my life where I sit on my ass. So any energy or joy or even brain activity, like any sharpness that I have in my brain, I feel like a lot of it is owed to, reading is one, but I do feel like fitness is a major component in that too. I don't think health is so important. I really think that health is such an important factor into everything you do. So even if you're not like a fitness bro, like you're not like heavy into it, you don't have to do weightlifting to make that a part of your life. You can just stop what you're doing and go out for a long walk. And I think you're going to reap like a lot of the benefits of what I'm talking about, just getting your body moving. I think it's everything. It makes me so happy. It helps me sleep better. Like it does something to me. Like if I'm working out consistently, I'm sleeping much deeper. So I find that pretty fascinating. Okay. I have 2 more questions. Here's another question from Gertrude. So again, apologize about the mispronunciation of your name if I did mispronounce it. Gertrude asks another question. What do I think about social media as a whole? And he puts in parentheses like the benefits, risks, mental health, relationships, etc. I feel like this is a very important topic for me right now. And it really goes hand in hand with the first question that I answered today about what's more important, the process or the results. This kind of goes alongside with that. Right now, I'm taking a major step back from social media. That's not to say I'm not on social media. I am. I'm still on Instagram. But just recently, I made a decision to remove Instagram off of my home page on my iPhone. I now actually have to go out of my way to type in the name and like find it. So that makes me less inclined to just like sporadically tap it just out of muscle memory. I think right now there's some obvious benefits to social media, especially if you're pursuing a career in the arts. I think you almost have to have social media. As a musician, it would be silly not to have social media. You have to find a way to advertise your shows and your performances to actually get people to come out and to see you live. So I do think social media is important for those reasons. However, I think now more than ever, and again, I think this is like a collective conscious thing going on because I'm hearing more and more people talk about this as well. It's not just me. I think we're all kind of waking up and realizing how horrible this actually is. And we're essentially turning into zombies. Like we're just so glued to our phones. And this isn't new. Like this isn't new knowledge. We've known this for a while. It's always been like phones are bad for you, but I'm addicted to them. What are we going to do about it? But nowadays I'm actually seeing more and more people doing these major transformations where they're getting rid of excessive social media. I actually just got rid of Facebook altogether on my phone. I have the Messenger app, but I don't have the actual Facebook because I don't need to divide Instagram and YouTube are my things. I don't need to divide my attention into multiple different things anymore. And people will be like, why don't you get a TikTok? Why don't you? I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't have FOMO over this. I don't care if I'm missing out on the potential success of my growth. I don't want to rot away. I don't want my soul to rot away as a human being because I'm completely engrossed in the productivity in trying to make it, whatnot. I'm not letting go of my goals. That's not to say I'm doing that either. It's just that I don't. I heard this theory flying around a little bit on YouTube. I don't remember the name. I wish I could quote the person who started it, but other people had been catching on and commenting on it. So I'm going to be commenting on it as well. There's this theory that, and I've kind of felt this intuitively for a long time now, but a couple YouTubers out there are putting it in better words than I could. And so I'm just going to reiterate what they said. The social media apps are designed like a casino, is what I heard somebody say, especially if you're a content creator. it's designed in such a way, and you don't even have to be like a major content creator. You could just be a general person that posts pictures on Instagram, and you're addicted to see the outcome of how many followers you get or how many likes you get. But the way it is when you post things on Instagram or YouTube, for example, you'll randomly get one video that like really gets a hit, and that keeps you hooked because you kind of get this high from the success that comes along with getting the hit on that one video. So then it pulls you in. You're like, got to create more content to get that hit again. And you'll find that to put content out on YouTube, it's very much a gamble. You never know when you're going to get those views again. And I think the system is rigged in that way to keep people on these things and to keep people cranking this content, to keep other people to continue viewing the content so that they'll... you guys know where I'm going with this. Like, I'm getting sidetracked here, but I wanted to throw this in there too. Bo Burnham, I just recently saw a video of him from like 10 years ago. What a genius. Like, he had this insight 10 years ago because he was a content creator. So he saw it. He like kind of like had a premonition of the future about this. And what he said was so brilliant. He said that they used to, a long time ago, people used to colonize land. People used to try to take property. People used to try to take things from each other. Now people want to colonize your attention. People want to colonize your mind. So your mind and your attention are the goods. Like, your mind and attention are the valuables. And it took me a while to realize that. I mean, like, I always knew it and I always felt this wasn't good for me. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I was blind to the fact that being addicted to your phones wasn't good for you. But it took me a while to realize that even being a content creator, you're in a way sort of powerless to this addiction of like becoming big. And I also wonder how much of that existed before social media as well, like in the pop music industry and whatnot, with like record deals. Like there's just greed. There's just always going to be greed somewhere in this. And I think right now these social media apps are designed in such a way to keep the content creators and the viewers hooked. That's not to say that I want to quit doing this podcast, because I actually love doing this podcast. That's not to say I want to quit being a musician and posting things on social media to get people to my shows, because I love performing live music. I love being a musician, and I actually love making videos and sharing them with people on YouTube as well. But what that is telling me is that I want to keep myself aware of this and not become so hooked and sucked into it. And that's why, like I was saying before, I just decided to make this big mind shift of not really focusing so much on getting there fast and just focusing on enjoying myself in this process. So I make my videos, but nowadays it's really about trying to find my authentic voice and not trying to be a product of anything, and not trying to overwork myself to the bone where I don't have good sleep, where I'm not having flourishing friendships in my life. Another quote I'm going to bring here, I've probably quoted this a lot on this podcast, but this is another brilliant quote. It's by Whitney Cummings. And she said this because she had a similar thing in her life as well. She was a workaholic, and she started to realize that she wasn't able to relate to people anymore. And what she said was, art reflects life, but if you don't have a life, you'll have nothing to say in your art. So I just think that's a brilliant thing to say. Like, it's funny. She's just like a modern comedian, but to me, that's like it's like a quote. It's going to be on the plaques for like hundreds of years. It's so true. It's like, yes, indulge in this path of wanting to aim for something greater, to aim for the greater good, but don't get sucked into, watch your back in the process. Like, watch your back in the process of getting involved with these social media apps. And I'm coming from this from the place of a content creator. Even as a consumer, you also want to watch your back as well, because it's interesting, because the algorithm is only giving you what you want, right? But man, I'm kind of slowing down my speech because there's just like a lot coming up right now. I was just talking about this with somebody today. you kind of think about where laws and religion even came from in the first place in society, way before social media. I would imagine, I mean, I don't really know the history of where religion and where laws came from. I guess religion being moral laws and laws being like societal laws, like, you know, the police and whatnot, the court system. I don't know the history of why laws were created, but I would imagine it was probably something similar to what we're seeing with social media. It's probably like there was just like society was growing, and when you leave human beings to their own devices, they're probably not going to behave their best. And I guess where I'm going with this is that, interestingly enough, the content that you're getting back to you, and if you're getting hooked into certain like topics that are negative, like things that make you angry, things that make you overly lustful and horny, things that make you want to argue with people, too much politics, too much negative news, like stuff like that. If you're finding yourself hooked into these types of things on social media, that's because just like society needed rules, it's like this is another version of that manifesting in a digital form. It's almost like there needs to be a digital religion, or like digital police, or like digital courts, like to deal with these issues that are coming up that are keeping us hooked. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's a lot going on. I don't know if I just didn't make any sense or if that was a bunch of rambling, because this is my first time trying to like really articulate these ideas on the podcast. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, I think as human beings, it's time for everybody to wake up and realize that they have some responsibility in this. If you're a content creator, you have responsibility to not be hooked to the product, to not become a product of the trends, to make sure you're creating wholesome content and not content that's going to likewise keep people hooked and addicted in a negative way. Like, what are you feeding to your audience? Are you feeding them, are you feeding your audience a healthy meal, or are you feeding them McDonald's? You know, like, what are you feeding them on this digital platform and this digital landscape? And again, if you're a consumer in this digital landscape, what are you consuming? Are you consuming McDonald's, or are you consuming stuff that's contributing to anything that gears towards evil tendencies, or are you consuming stuff that's going to make you better? Because you could actually, in theory, if you have discipline, you could actually learn a lot. Like, there's a lot of educational sites, there's a lot of educational sources on YouTube, there's a lot of great podcasters, philosophy videos, science videos, you know, religion, you know, there's a lot of ways you can actually educate yourself with the internet. You can have social community groups where people are trying to get together for some purpose of a greater good. You can have live stream of live musicians, and there's a lot of good that exists on the internet. But I think it's time to have some self-control and discipline as a consumer, and as a creator, it's time to have more conscientious thought into what you're producing and how you're being affected by the whole thing. You know, it's very complicated, but long story short, I think we're leaning towards a very unhealthy direction with social media, and it's time for us all to like take individual control back, and to try to do the right things for ourselves and for others in this digital landscape. Okay. I have one more question today. It's from James Mack. This one's a little shorter one because I don't have a long answer for it. James Mack wants to know if I believe in ghosts. To answer this question, sort of a similar answer to the answer I gave for the Mandela effect. I do keep an open mind with things, but this in particular, I don't have any experience. I've never seen a ghost before. I don't have any desire to go like ghost hunting or ghost chasing, or I've never felt I believed any of the ghost documentaries that I saw. Like, I always thought there was like, people would be like, we found a little spot in the picture, like that type of stuff. Never got into that. That's not to say I don't believe in the other world. I don't believe in another realm. I do have a very open mind about that. I do believe in spirits. I heard Jordan Peterson talking about this recently, in some ideas that he's been coming up with, is that he believes that, and he's not the only person who believes this, by the way, a lot of people have talked about this, but he believes that emotions are some sort of possession of a spirit. And for some reason, that line of thinking really resonated with me. I do feel like it does feel like emotions, like, you know, when you get really angry or when you get really horny or when you get really sad or really emotional, it does feel like a spiritual possession of some kind. Like, you know, I'm sure there's also scientific explanations and reasons for why people kind of come on with such grand emotional shifts throughout the day. But for some reason, I really like that explanation. It makes a lot of sense to me, and it actually makes it easier for me to work through different emotions by thinking of them as my body is just this blank canvas for spirits to enter. And I don't think that means we don't have control either. I think that we do have control about like what spirits we allow into our body and whatnot. So I guess I could say that I do believe in invisible energy or invisible entities or spiritual presences that we can't see, but I don't know if I believe in it in the form of ghosts, like the typical way that you would see it, like Casper, or like invisible souls floating around my room that you can kind of see in a picture. I don't really believe it in that way. That's not to say that I don't believe that human consciousness doesn't become something else or go somewhere else, because I think if you go by the principle that energy doesn't die, just converts into something else, I do wonder, where does the energy of, I mean, I guess our bodies do become energy in the soil, you can say that, but where does that life energy go? Like, where does that energy of, I remember when my grandmother passed away, my father witnessed it. I was there too, but he was very intimately witnessing it because he was holding her as she passed away. I was in the room, but he was like very connected to her. I believe he was maybe holding her hand as she passed away. And the way he described it, he said it was like life just poofed. Like, he said it was like she was there and she wasn't. And it was this really freaky sensation that made him very uncomfortable. And I understand that on a scientific level, that your energy doesn't die in the sense that your body rots in the ground and becomes food for the soil and for the bugs and everything in there. But that thing that he talked about, that like sudden just gone of energy, I find it hard to believe that that just becomes nothing. You know what I mean? I think that goes somewhere. So that's not to say that me not believing ghosts doesn't mean I don't believe that people's energy doesn't go somewhere into some other realm or whatnot. But I don't know if I believe that they're floating around my room in, white silhouettes. I don't believe in them in that sense. But anyways, that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode 115. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would be incredibly helpful. And please feel free to leave your comments below on anything I talked about today. I'm very curious to hear your opinion, and I want to engage in conversation with you guys as well. So that would mean a lot to me if you can communicate in the comment section. And that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode 115. Have a good day, guys. Bye.